Good day to everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. This is the day that Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. God is great all the time. All the time God is great. Let's not waste no time. Let's get into it. So, when you think of dynasties in the NBA, the ones that come to mind are the first original dynasty, the Minneapolis Lakers of the late 40s, early 50s. George Mikan led his team to 5 titles. Then there was the Celtics of the 60s. The Lakers of the 80s. And I would say somewhat the Celtics of the 80s too. You know, they won 3. So I would say it was mainly the Lakers in the 80s, but the Celtics also won a couple of titles as well. So I would say more Lakers and Celtics in the 80s. Then, of course, there's the 90s Bulls, the early millennium. It was mainly the Lakers or the Spurs. Then you have the Warriors of the 2010s. So the only decade that did not feature a dominant team was the 1970s. And it was parity. It was parity for teams winning NBA titles. Okay. And the Celtics won 2 titles and the Knicks won 2 titles. But Boston set the tone for the 60s, but not the 70s. So the 70s started out by the Knicks winning it over the Lakers in 1970. Then in 71, the Milwaukee Bucks, led by Kareem, Oscar Robertson, Bobby DeAndre, Lucius Allen, swept up the Bullets, the Earl Monroe, Wes Unseld led Bullets in 4 games. The Lakers won 33 straight in 1972 on their way to the championship. Then it was the 73 Knicks, the 74 Celtics, the surprising 75 Golden State Warriors, the 76 Celtics, the 77 Trailblazers, the 78 Bullets, and the 79 Sonics. Okay. So, this was the only decade, the 1970s, where there was no dominant team, during that era of the NBA. Most of the stars from the 60s, they were on their way out. Most of them had retired by 1975. Jerry West retired after 1974. Oscar Robertson retired after 1974. Willis Reed retired after 1974. Lucas, Dave DeBusschere. Yeah, a lot of those stars, a lot of the older stars from the 60s who were playing into the 70s, they were on their way out. And so you had teams like Golden State who could rise up and beat the Washington Bullets in 4 straight games. The Bullets in 1975 who are now known as the Wizards now. They were coached by K.C. Jones. And they actually had the best record in the league. They went 60-22 that year. Then turned around and got swept by Rick Barry and the Golden State Warriors. Yeah, so it was just a weird decade for NBA championships. No, 1970s will always be known as the parity decade for NBA champions. But it also wasn't the only thing going on in the NBA in the 1970s. You had the ABA versus the NBA, which extended back to the late 60s, starting in 1967, I believe. Yeah, starting in 1967. So you had that. They were battling every year for stars. I know the ABA lost out on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Rick Barry jumped the NBA to the ABA. Connie Hawkins jumped the ABA to the NBA. And it was just back and forth. Artis Gilmore played in the ABA before he played in the NBA. Moses Malone was drafted out of high school to the in the ABA. So it was just a back and forth battle between the two leagues, and finally merger talk began to emerge around 1972-73, and the merger actually happened in 1976 with New Jersey Nets, the Denver Nuggets, Indiana Pacers, and the San Antonio Spurs all joining the NBA. And some of the players and some of the teams actually had to pay for players to join their teams. They did have the ABA dispersal draft. But I know I read somewhere where the Chicago Bulls paid like $1 million to acquire Artis Gilmore. Dr. J, he was sold to the Philadelphia 76ers. Who else? Moses Malone went to Houston. And so those are just some of the names that moved, some of the bigger names that moved to the NBA following the merger of the ABA NBA. There were two fights that pretty much defined the 77-78 season. There was the opening game against Milwaukee, Lakers versus Bucks. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar took a swing at Kent Benson. Kareem broke his hand, unfortunately. Missed 20 games. And was suspended as well. I guess the 20 games he missed, no. I guess they counted as a suspension, I guess. I don't know. But he ended up missing 20 games. And then there was the punch. Kermit Washington and Rudy Tomjanovich. There was a fight that was breaking out at midcourt. Lakers were playing the Rockets at the Forum. Fight broke out, and players started to get involved. Rudy T came coming. He was coming behind Kermit Washington. Kermit just man, I don't know where this is being shown, but the Houston Rockets had a dynasty. The story of the 94-95 Houston Rockets, their 94 championship team and their 95 championship team. In that, they actually show in that championship documentary, they actually show the real-time footage of the punch. They show the real-time footage of the punch that forced Rudy T broken eye socket, cheekbone, had to have reconstructive surgery, had some brain damage, had a wee bit of brain damage because I read somewhere where some kind of a spinal fluid, and it was some kind of fluid in his brain was leaking, and if it doesn't seal, and the doctor said if it doesn't seal, he wasn't gonna make it. But God blessed him. But God was right. But God was right there with Rudy T. He was right there with Rudy T, and he made it through. Was able to resume his career the next season, and of course the rest is history. He eventually becomes a assistant coach with the Rockets. Then he coached the Rockets forever, from 1992 on up to 2003. So yeah, Dr. J, the 1976 ABA Slam Dunk Champion, joined the Philadelphia 76ers and took the Sixers to the finals his very first year, going up against none other than Bill Walton and the Portland Trailblazers. Sixers won the first two games, but the series turned when at the end of game two, there was a Portland player that grabbed a rebound, and Daryl Dawkins took him down hard. And Maurice Lucas came over behind, just hit Dawkins in the back of the head, and the two began to put up their hair dukes. From what I understand, Daryl Dawkins didn't want to fight Maurice Lucas. He wanted no part of wanting to fight Maurice Lucas, and the momentum changed, and so that single incident right there changed the whole complexion of the series, and the Blazers went on to win four straight. The 78 Bullets, they had the Big E, Elvin Hayes, Wes Unseld, Kevin Porter, Mitch Kupchak, Tom Henderson. Dick Motta was the head coach, and the Wizards, back then known as the Bullets, won the 78 title. Did you know that Dennis Johnson, who was playing for the Seattle Supersonics at that time, Dennis Johnson shot 0 for 14 in Game 7 of the 1978 NBA Finals. Think about that for a second. Dennis Johnson, one of the best players in the NBA ever, shot 0 for 14 in Game 7 of the 1978 NBA Finals. I kid you not. 0 for 14. So that's a reason why the Bullets went on to win the 7th and deciding game. However, the Sonics came back the next year. They still had Dennis Johnson. They had Paul Silas. They had Jack Sigma, Downtown Freddie Brown, Gus Williams, Marvin Webster. Lenny Wilkins was the head coach, and Lenny Wilkins led them to their first and only title for the Seattle Supersonics by defeating none other than the Washington Bullets. Okay, so I would say the forgotten title of the decade would be the 73 Knicks. Some of the players, if you watch the documentary When the Garden Was Eden, some of the players on that 73 championship team say the 73 squad, that's the forgotten championship. The 1970 championship is more remembered because Willis Reed came out at the last minute. So that's more remembered. I would say the most remembered championship would be the 76 series between the Celtics and the Suns, and the triple overtime game that took place. Boston won 128-126, but that game went to triple overtime. And so that was one of the most exciting games, NBA Finals games. Then I would say 1974 was memorable. Back then, the Milwaukee Bucks in 1974 were considered a Western Conference team. And the Celtics were, who have always been in the East. But back then in this 1974, the Bucks were considered a Eastern Conference team, okay? So they matched up in the 74 finals. Kareem versus Cowens. Boston won that in 7 games. So, yeah. So, I was watching a segment on NBA Open Court, and it was called Best Teams Never to Win a Title. And I don't think they did the 70s. They started out with the 80s, okay? And people said the 80s Bucks, okay? The 80s Bucks. Then Kevin McHale said it would be the Philadelphia 76ers of the late 70s bleeding over into the 80s, bleeding over to the early part of the 80s. And so it was the Sixers of the early 80s. They won the championship in 83, of course. So I would say one of the best teams never to win a title were the late 80s to mid 90s Phoenix Suns. Late 80s to early 90s Phoenix Suns. Think about it. They had Kevin Johnson. They had Tom Chambers. They had Jeff Hornacek. Thunder Dan Harley. They had everything. They had Coach Cotton Fitzsimmons. So they made it to the Western Conference Finals in 1989. Got swept by the Lakers. Made it back to the Western Conference Finals in 1990. Lost to the Trailblazers in 6. Then made it back to the Western Conference Finals when Charles Barkley got them over the top. Lost to the Bulls in the finals. And so, yeah. I would say the late 80s Suns, early to mid 90s Suns, one of the best teams never to win a championship. I would also throw the New York Knicks in there as well, which I'm very, very happy that they did not win a championship. Because I was a Bulls fan. That's why. I would say the 90 Spurs, although I really don't consider them, a real championship contender until the late 90s. I would probably say the San Antonio Spurs. I would say the Portland Trailblazers of the early millennium, one of the best teams never to win a title. The Phoenix Suns with Steve Nash, one of the best teams never to win a title. Yeah, so I would say that's about it for best teams who never won a title. No, what are some of your best teams that you think never won a title? What are some of your best teams you think that have never won a title? All right. That's it for Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. God is great all the time. All the time, God is great. I will see y'all on the next one. Peace out, y'all.